Welcome to Byte-Size Impressions. I'm Mike. Gaming has what's arguably the most welcoming fan base in all of entertainment. And I'm talking about the big picture here, by the way. There are obviously toxic and elitist people across a wide variety of communities. Call of Duty, League of Legends, I'm looking at you. But that's true when it comes to any fandom, right? By and large, gamers are happy to share their love of the art with you. And if their passion and the titles they show are enough to draw you into the fold, they'd welcome you with open arms. But I think it's fair to say that most of us take the developers, the people who work day and night for several years to make the art we consume, for granted. We buy a game for $60. I'm sorry, silly me, it's 2023, I meant $70. We install it and dive into large, immersive worlds, story arcs that are loaded to the brim with unexpected twists and turns, characters that have some of the best progression around because of how much players are able to connect with them, and then something happens. A character model glitches through the map, causing the player to reload from their last save point. Environmental textures fail to load and break immersion. Perhaps the game crashes or your save file becomes corrupted, leaving you with the tough choice of starting from the beginning again or leaving the game behind entirely. And who are the first group of people to hear about this? The game developers, of course. We rarely take the time to even think about them, let alone thank them when we're enjoying ourselves, but the very moment an issue arises, they're the first group of people to be harassed thanks to the connectivity of the internet. They're called nasty names and even receive death threats, all from the very community they spent years trying to serve and appease. Just to be clear, I don't think this should have to be said, but apparently it does. That kind of behavior is never, ever warranted. Go ahead, vent your critiques and frustrations to the world because there's nothing wrong with that. Hell, I do it all the time. I'm doing it here right now on this very video. You can even hold a company's feet to the fire because that's what will ultimately help to keep them accountable. That said, attacking people on a personal level is just flat out wrong. In most cases, developers aren't the people that are responsible for the issues that plague you. It's the publishers that decide which predatory business models should be included in the games, and it's the publishers that decide when a game should be released. If a game launches in an unfinished state, it's because the publisher, who knows about those deficiencies because the developers had undoubtedly informed them, decided to appease shareholders instead of giving developers the time needed in order to make something right. Some gamers understand where the buck truly stops, but plenty of folk assume that the developers of such failed products are incompetent and unworthy of working in the field at all. And because of that, now it seems that developers are finally starting to fight back. Now, I have no problem with developers telling it how it is. People aren't as informed about these situations as they should be, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And as of late, I've seen a handful of developers just losing the plot. Now, we've talked about this particular instance on the channel recently, but people that worked on Call of Duty lashed out online after God of War's Chris Judge made a joke at their expense during the Game Awards this year. They were grasping at the tiniest of straws, citing the number of copies sold between both franchises as some sort of barometer for quality. Bethesda employees have been responding to negative Starfield reviews online, and it hasn't been a particularly good look. You remember when I said, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things? If people are coming after you as a developer, say something back. But if people are just leaving their comments and opinions about a game on the Steam forums, let it go. One person on a Steam review said that the game was basically hollow and many of the planets feel empty. And then one dev responded, going out of their way to say, some of Starfield's planets are meant to be empty by design, but that's not boring. Now, keep in mind that this is a sentiment that many players that dipped into Starfield have shared regarding their time with the game, so this wasn't exactly an isolated opinion. Other people have complained about how there's no organic exploration because everything is broken up by fast travel and loading screens. Bethesda's response was to encourage people to merely consider how much data needs to be loaded in order to deliver the intended experience, missing the point entirely. So basically, what was going on there, the gaming community were expressing opinions that Starfield didn't quite hit the marks that they had expected an open world Bethesda game to hit. And the developers were reaching out to just tell them they're wrong. The Day Before was revealed some time ago to be an extraction shooter, similar in gameplay to The Division, but set in a post-apocalyptic world that's filled with zombies. After a lot of radio silence and virtually no marketing buildup, I mean, some people didn't even believe this game was real, the game actually launched and confirmed, sadly, what everyone had feared all along. The game was in very rough shape, and that's putting it mildly. Gameplay footage online shows that it was an unplayable, broken mess, and developers have gone on record online to say that shit happens directly to their customers. I don't care what the story was behind the scenes, but that's just unacceptable. But I'm not here to dig into these occurrences, but rather to address the increasing trend of developers trying to tell their audience that their opinions are somehow invalid. I get it. It's hard for developers to spend years of their lives on a game only to have the gaming community tear their work down after the fact. While I do believe that gamers need to be a little more understanding about where the blame really lies most of the time, developers also need to understand that we as consumers don't need to care about the troubles that have plagued them behind the scenes. We have no obligation, and nor should we. Now, I'm not talking about crunch culture, of course, because studios absolutely need to be better about that. I think we should care about that. But we don't need to be understanding about shipping deadlines. We don't need to accept that a publisher was fine with pushing out a broken product because of some puff-chested CEO that just decided, screw it, we'll just fix it later. At the end of the day, the only thing that consumers need to care about is what they've purchased with their hard-earned money. Regardless of the constraints developers face during the creation of that product, it's not the customer's problem. If they're spending $70 for a game's base package, because remember, a lot of these games offer season passes, microtransactions, add-on DLC, and more, they have every right to have and voice their own opinions. For a developer to just swoop in and downplay the feedback or even dismiss a customer's problem as a skill issue, yeah, that's a thing that happened. It shows that some of these developers are extremely out of touch, which is ironic considering that's how they're expressing that they're feeling about gamers these days. There was a revolving door of talent because the leadership at the top was terrible? Not our problem. Budgetary constraints? Not our problem. Unrealistic development timeline? Not our problem. Poor communication between internal teams, pressure from shareholders. The project had to be restarted halfway through development. Much of what was promised had to get left on the cutting room floor. The hardware and game engines that are being used for development are ancient and they lack efficiency. Not our problem. Okay? That may sound insensitive, but that's the truth. $70 isn't exactly chump change. For most adults, that's hours of work on the clock. And if you're a kid, that's your birthday money, Christmas money, or months worth of savings. People deserve games that aren't broken or featureless at launch, and for publishers to gamble with our money otherwise, well, good luck getting people to buy your next game. And by the way, developers, and again, I know this isn't your fault, but this is an important thing for you to keep in mind before you direct your ire at the very people that get upset with you, okay? It's incredibly nervy to tell people to chill out when they've been swallowing the tough pill of broken games for several years at the very least. Every time a game launches in an unsavory state, the people have spoken out about the industry getting its act together time and time and time and time again. And have they listened? No. They've maintained business as usual and even raised the price of their games along the way. How does that work? So before you go online and expect people to be more accepting of your product's deficiencies because of one reason or another that customers really shouldn't have to care about, keep that in mind. The publishers you work for haven't just been treating you like second-class citizens, but they've been treating their customers that way too, and customers feel it. So maybe developers and consumers have more in common than they realize. Just something for you to keep in mind.